person whose self-esteem is dependent on the validation and respect of others, that person is emotionally destroyed.
So when I met you, in your journey to read 100 books. You've surpassed that right now. Your new goal is to complete 150.
A lot of people are not able to keep up with their reading habit or follow through with the promise that they've made is because they've not found a book where they can get emotionally attached to, like become one with the book.
If someone has never picked up a book, but they want to try this approach of changing the environment and then retry building the habit of reading a book, how would you approach that?
Try to sit in a place where you can see the entire room and try to have as much less clutter as possible, because your mind associates clutter with chaos. My first aha moment came when I actually interviewed for a role after reading these 3 or 4 books.
Before we dive into this conversation, please give me just 20 seconds. I know you've got hundreds of podcasts you could listen to, but any point during Unlayered, you paused and thought, that was me, or I felt that too. I'd love to ask a quick, simple favor. Please help me with a follow or subscribe to my channel, because that one click will not only help me bring more conversations to you, but for others who might need it. And it means the world for this work to continue. Thank you so much. Enjoy the conversation. Mohit, welcome to Unlayered. I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you for accepting my invite.
Well, thank you for having me. And yeah, I think so. Talking on any platform is like a privilege because not everyone gets it. So thank you.
Let's dive into it. I think I met you close to 2 to 3 years ago when we connected both on, I think, on LinkedIn. I felt like the stories that you were sharing about building a reading habit was quite inspiring and refreshing. So I connected with you. And at that time, I was also trying to build a reading habit. And that's what brought me into you. And then I think the initial chat, you gave me some suggestions how to build a reading habit, which I actually implemented. And now 2 to 3 years later, reading has become an integral part of my life. I've been consistent over it. And also I can say it has transformed my life in different ways. So if we start our conversation, it's if I ask you, what's one thing if the listeners will get if they listen to our conversation today?
I think so. They will get a lot of faith because I feel that we struggle with faith a lot. Like we struggle with having faith in the future, like something that we cannot see, something that is abstract. We find it like really difficult. But I feel that if in any conversation I can help people understand the power of having faith in the future and then using that to take action in the present, I feel that that would compound. And on the other hand, it's also like very, very magical. And just going a step back, I feel that you're one of the few career coaches or mindset coaches, whatever you decide to call yourself or are you calling yourself. I feel that you're one of the few people who actually like believes in the power of reading, because I think so not every coach out there understands how powerful reading can be. And it's very difficult to recommend something to someone else when you've not done it yourself. Like that enthusiasm is not there. That belief in yourself is not there. So I would say that like well done on applying those lessons on reading.
Thank you. And you're very kind to share that. I know it wasn't easy. I'm sure people who are listening to it might feel that, okay, what if I don't have that belief system in me and I have tried enough? We will dive into it and we will, I'm sure, talk about a lot of things you've learned through your experiences. And most interestingly, I wanted to share this. So when I met you, you in your journey to read 100 books, you've surpassed that right now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I think your new goal is to complete 150, right? So we will discuss how do you get to this point, right? Because I think a lot of people will see this story very inspiring and interesting, and how you stuck into that habit of reading over these years. And the other part is you're planning to have conversations with 500 people, and you've finished 150 already, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I've not updated it, but yes.
Okay. So actually the current numbers are like that. I took it from LinkedIn. So yeah, I don't know the actual number. But let's dive into it from in your lived experience, how this habit of like reading came into your life. Can you walk us through that story?
Absolutely. And the thing is that I usually tend to document a lot of things, but then this reading habit that started, I was not in my documenting phase. So whatever I'm going to say is like reflecting on the past. So I'm going to ramble a bit and also go like on a tangent, but then bring me back if possible. So yeah, so I feel that I moved to Australia. Like I just had one thing in my mind. I knew what exactly not to do, which is work in IT. I did not want that lifestyle at all. But then I knew that I was involved in sport for such a long time. Even my parents were professional athletes at one time. So sport has been a very important part of growing up. And it also was a very important part where it like always made me feel inclusive. It made me feel like I have a connection with the people I play. And also it was like it gave me a feeling of belonging somewhere. So I moved to Australia thinking that I have only one thing that I want to do now. I know what I don't want to do now. What I want to do is that I want to study in sport and then work in sport. And I came here in 2018 in Melbourne, studied at Deakin University, and I graduated. I felt that I put myself in a very good position to find a full-time role in sport. But then, of course, as the Stoics call it, right? Like amor fati, destiny. Like destiny has different plans for you. So I graduated during peak COVID. I lost my casual jobs. I lost my internship, but I actually saw it in a very different light compared to other people. I thought that I felt that this is a great opportunity for me to think as to what I want to do in life in the future. Because now I'm by myself, but in the future, if something like this happens, then I might have a family with me and it would be very difficult with no income. And I started working as a cleaner at a school, and it was a very mundane, repetitive task, which I was enjoying initially because it's like I'm doing nothing and I'm getting paid, which is like fantastic. But actually, I did not understand or grasp the gravity of the situation back then. And then after a few weeks, reality started to like set in. I got a reality check from life that, hey, like you didn't come here to do this like for such a long time. But I think the one thing that I got through the cleaning role is dignity of labor. I started respecting people who work in those roles because often the things that you see and do are not. It's not something that you do in your everyday life until or unless you probably have like a toddler or a dog at home. But then like I think so. How you do one thing is how you do everything. That's how I've been brought up. Something that I've learned from my parents while I was growing up. And yeah, I did my job the best I could. But then one day I went back and like a very naive person, I just Googled what to do when your passion is not working for you. And I expected Google to give me an answer, but then I think so I went into this rabbit hole of watching YouTube videos, of reading articles, etc., etc. And then I come across a word called purpose. I'm like, I've heard about this word, but I don't understand what it means. And then I saw that there are a few to books to read that will help you understand what this purpose word means. And I think so all my life, like I knew that to live a holistic life, exercising is important, eating well is important, having good relationships around you is important, associating with like-minded people is important, and reading is also very important. But that was the one thing that I was not doing. So I was like, I have a lot of time now. It's COVID time. Might as well start reading. And the first book that I read was Start with Why. And I think so when it came to that book, I think so I was very, very fortunate that the books I chose initially were the books that I actually wanted on an emotional level. That is why a lot of people are not able to keep up with their reading habit or follow through with the promise that they've made, is because they've not found a book where they can get emotionally attached to, like become one with the book, and also let the book become one with you. Like it's a two-way street. And although a book is a non-living thing, but then on a very spiritual level, it makes sense. My second book was Man's Search for Meaning. When I read that book, I was like, this person survived the Holocaust and then he came out, he survived it and he wrote a book. And his purpose in life when he was inside the concentration camps was to see his wife one more time. But his wife was already dead. But then in his mind, that was his purpose. That's what gave his life meaning. And if you read the book Man's Search for Meaning, like right from page one, there are these amazing, fantastic paragraphs, quotes, quotations that is mentioned. And I think so it's on the third page of the book where there is this quote where he says that a person whose self-esteem is dependent on the validation and respect of others, that person is emotionally destroyed. And then he goes on to explain that the people in the concentration camps, the people who died first were the people who tied their self-worth to their degrees. He mentions that in the book. That people who are researchers, PhD holders, doctors, lawyers, they were the first people to perish, unfortunately, because that's what they attached their self-worth to their degrees. And that was like a wake-up call for me, because that is what I was doing myself, was that I was attaching my self-worth to the degree that I was doing and the job that I had. And I think so that one thing led to the other. I ended up, I think so, reading 4 books in 6 months. My third book was Ego is the Enemy. My fourth book was Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And I think so that those were the correct books that I was choosing. And that is why I tell people that, like, ask yourself what are a few things you're working on, like strengths or weaknesses or anything else that's going on in your life, and choose books according to that, because you will be able to create an emotional bond with the book, and that will help you. Even if you don't finish the book, it will help you take some lessons from the book that you can apply to your life. And my first moment came when I actually interviewed for a role after reading these 3 or 4 books. When I interviewed for the role, I started saying stuff that I'd never heard myself say before. Today, I can say that I was able to say that because whatever I learned from those books, like, was somewhere buried deep in my subconscious mind, and they came out when I was interviewing, and it was like it was like a trigger, I would say. As soon as I heard that, I was like, hey, I've read this in a book. I can quickly attach this to my life and then also to the job description and give an answer. And yeah, so Melbourne went into, I think, so 6 more lockdowns after that. And it was a no-brainer for me, where I was like, I can lose my job anytime, so might as well just stick to reading, because it is helping you, like, grow on a personal level. I think so there is personal development and then there is personal growth. I've still not figured out what the actual difference is, but I prefer personal growth more to development, because, like, you're growing. And then I came across a book called Limitless by Jim Quick. And then I understood that why people lose focus, why they're not able to retain information, why people leave books midway, etc., etc. And then I went into the rabbit hole of, I started reading like journal articles, I started reading blog posts, I started watching YouTube videos as to why people are not able to maintain a reading habit. And that is where my journey actually began. So this was back in, I think it's October 2021 or something. And yeah, that is when I started building like a steady reading habit. But since August 2022, I have not missed even a single day of reading, which is like at least reading for 15 to 20 minutes every day. So yeah, basically that's my reading journey, I would say.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. Thanks for sharing that story. And I think I know a lot of people might have heard it before from your LinkedIn audiences and other podcasts, but I think it's still worth reading it out for someone who is passionate about building that habit, but who are still stuck with it, keeping it consistent. We'll get into it. I want to take it back to the first book. Start with why. More than the content, I wanted to dive into your thought process in keeping the momentum of it. I know the adversities, the challenges that you were facing prompted you to pick up the book, and you had that motivation anyway, right? But were there any moments while reading that book at that time where you felt like you couldn't continue or maintain the consistency?
I don't remember that well, but I know that I wasn't reading a lot. Like, I was reading probably 2 pages per day or something. And I was relying on my feelings and emotions a lot. Like, if I did not feel like reading on the day, I wouldn't read it. Like, I would just say that, okay, I don't feel like reading. I don't want to do it, because I had not yet understood like how that personal growth compounds with time and how magical it is. And yeah, I don't remember much of it, but then there were a few books that I can name you other popular books that I left midway. One was The Power of the Subconscious Mind. I couldn't finish that book. Then there's a book called 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, very popular book. I couldn't finish that book. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, very, very popular. I couldn't finish that book. And yeah, I lost interest midway with most of these books, because that was what it is, right? Like, I felt like I didn't need that content at that moment in my life. But then with Start With Why, he gave like great examples on like about Apple and Microsoft, right? He said that Apple's why is challenging the status quo, and that is why how does he challenge it? He challenges it by making products that no one else has ever made, and premium products. And what does he do? Is creative and innovative. And I recently learned that later on, Steve Jobs actually went on to become the CEO of Pixar, which was then acquired by Disney. And then with Microsoft, Microsoft's purpose why was to ensure that every house on this planet has a computer, a desktop. And I think so they both achieved their why, right? Like, and it was an ongoing thing. It was not like, okay, it ends on one day. It was an ongoing thing. So I understood that a purpose is something that needs to be ongoing, and you need to like have a new challenge every time you reach your destination. So that is the only thing that is one thing I picked up from the book, Start With Why. I know it
Right.
does not answer your question, but that's my take
No,
on
no,
it.
I find it interesting. I'm trying to pick up a pattern. Like I'm just visualizing someone who has picked a book by a recommendation of a friend or something you found from AI or university or whatnot. But I understand we are all unique people and we find interest in building habits or interest based on sometimes the belief systems we have. For you, I know you mentioned it's the emotions part that you feel like you understand what emotions connect with the book better and then you lean in with it, and then you have a bit of awareness when it doesn't connect with you. You feel like you accept that it's okay to leave it, right? But I'm curious to know, like, one thing that came out is that the examples part of why, like, that's also like very interesting for me, right? Even though it's a nonfiction book talking about a very broad topic like purpose and start finding your why, it gives examples of other success stories, companies where you find more value in it, and maybe that connected you to finish the book. Because that was my question: how did you find that first book? Because you're trying to build a habit, and but somehow you managed to finish that book without dropping consistency or maybe not a lot of distractions, right? But whereas others, maybe, I know you picked the certain books and now you relate to it, like saying that, okay, you picked the right 4 books to start off your journey, and I think 4 books is far more enough for you to
Yeah,
make it consistent. Right?
absolutely.
But
Yes.
I'm sure there's many people out there, let's dive into that, who might have picked one book and they know rationally that reading books is something on your list, and then they invested on this book, but it makes it really difficult for you to build that habit on a daily basis, and then it becomes more of a pain. You've talked to more than 150 people, so maybe we can take our conversation to there. From people you talk with, I'm sure a lot of people have connected with you to get advice on how to build a reading habit. What challenges or different patterns you have seen from those people who find it difficult to build a reading habit or to make it consistent?
Oh, that's a good question. I think so. The biggest, and like, I don't blame people for it. I just feel that the system that we are a part of does not teach us that, but it's a very cliched thing. And I think it's become very popular on social media now. There's this guy called Simon Squibb where he goes around asking people, what's your dream? What's your dream? I feel that something that people struggle with is like they don't know what their dream is. Like they do
Mm.
not know what ideal lifestyle they want to live in the future. And that is why they struggle with taking action in the present. And what do I mean by that is that if you just probably take a microphone around and ask 100 fresh graduates that what do you want in life, they are going to tell you they want a job. But out of those 100, there are going to be 2 or 3 people who will actually tell you that I want to take care of my aging parents. I want to travel the world. I want to probably run all the world marathons. So they understand that the job is a platform that will help them, or a vehicle that will help them get there. So they are not too fixated on the job. They are more fixated on the bigger dream that they have. But they understand, and then they think about their dream and then they reverse engineer it. Like, to do that, what will I need? I probably need some security. And if you're talking to a migrant, they would be, I need some security and stability. So I need a permanent residency. if I need a if I want a permanent residency, I need a job. Sorry, I need a skills assessment. If I need a skills assessment, I need a job, etc., etc. Like, and then they reverse engineer it. But the job is only small part of a very big journey. But if you make your job the destination, then once you reach the destination, you don't know what's next, and then you try to maintain the status quo. Like, that's what I learned from Start with Why. Like, challenge the status quo, like challenge your status quo also. And I feel that, like, if people are happy wherever they are and they want to maintain it, go for it. But then I know that the people who try to maintain anything just go backwards in life. So I think so. Reading books enables you. If you think about some of the greatest books ever written, they have the word think in it. Like Think and Grow Rich, The Magic of Thinking Big, As a Man Thinketh. Meditations does not have the word think in it, but it means reflections, like thinking. Then Think Again by Adam Grant. All these like fantastic books have the name Think in it. So I just tell people that, like, stop and think whether the job needs to be the ultimate goal or just a small part of a bigger dream that you have. So this is what I've learned from talking to people. And again, it is not their fault, right? Like, it's the upbringing, it's the social conditioning, it's the friends that they've had, the people that they're surrounded by, all these, the environment they are a part of, all these factors play a very big part in the way a person thinks. And that is why I decided to, like, be more uncomfortable and, like, do things people are not doing, so that I'm able to discover more things about myself. And I feel that once people understand that everything that they are searching for is within themselves, they become ready to pay any amount of money to learn that thing about themselves. And that is what I do through reading books. I feel I'm actually purchasing the book not so that, like, I can be this fantastic reader and then show off as to how many books I'm reading, but I think so I'm purchasing the book so that I find one sentence that will help me understand something about myself.
Amazing. It's interesting you picked up on the belief systems, right? It's the conditioning, it's the environment. That could be the driving force behind someone picking up a book and integrating it as a habit into their lives. And I'm a firm believer in that, because I think the driving force of the belief systems is what leads us to show us what is pain and what is pleasure. Like, I think Tony Robbins and many other great thinkers have shared that. And how we associate what actions or behaviors that drives us to pain or pleasure is driven by, I believe, the generalizations that comes from past experiences. It could be your culture, parenting, friends, or the environment that you live in. Now, if you integrate that into reading, like, the same person will associate reading as something that drives pain, whereas someone else like you, now after all these efforts of reading 150 or close to 150 books, associate that behavior as something that gives you pleasure, right? I think, like, generalization, I think we need it. For an example, I think one of the books I read, like, I found out, for an example, like, you see an unknown, like an unusual lock of a door, but from your past experience and generalization previously, similar locks have helped me to unlock the door, open the door. So I will, like, my brain has wired to use the lock to open it. So practical reasons, you'll need it, but sometimes it can, I think, be a double-edged sword, where you associate, like, maybe one trigger, one event, someone saying, hey, you're not a reader, like some comment that you got from when you're a 10-year-old saying that you're not like a person who sits down and read, you're a playful person, you're the person who goes and plays sports, not reading. And that's where I feel we, based on how we associate pain and pleasure, we, like, interpret it could be a misinterpretation of a past experience that you're not a good reader. I don't know, have you come off people like that where they say, hey, I'm not a good reader?
It's a
Just,
very common thing. Yeah.
and what did you ask from them, or what have you learned when they share that? Like, have you asked maybe another question to, like, explore the thought process behind that?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. A concept that I've learned with time while talking to people is to ask clarifying questions, because
Yeah,
a lot of the times they probably, like, label themselves with things that are not true. Like,
yeah.
for example, I'm not a good reader, or I'm shy, or I'm reserved. What does that mean? Ask them that, what do you mean by you're shy? Or what do you mean by you're reserved? Or what do you mean by you're not a good reader? I think so. Through reading books itself, I've understood that everything is like a skill. It can be developed. Like it can be developed, it can be built. And that is why I try to take people on a journey where they find the answer themselves, that hey, this is a skill that I can eventually develop or cultivate if I spend some time, if I spend some intentional time every day doing it. And like James Clear mentions this like again and again in his book Atomic Habits, that like think about brushing your teeth. Like you don't have to get up and then think that hey, I have to brush my teeth, because if you have to do that, then I think so you need to go to your dentist too, because you might have missed a few days of brushing your teeth. But then I asked myself that what will it take for me to develop a reading habit that is similar to brushing my teeth, where I do not have to think about it. It is just a part of my identity, not even my routine, not even my everyday life. Like it's a part of my identity. It is who I'm going to be in the future. And and again, I just asked him a question that, hey, what do you mean by I'm not a good reader? And then, like, when you start unpacking that, you will understand that it's focus or it is concentration. And most of the times, even on the follow-up questions, the statements that people make, it's usually something that they've heard from someone else, or something they've just like acquired through probably a movie that they've watched, a TV series that they've seen, probably the radio, because the subconscious mind is so powerful, right? Like whatever you feed it on a regular basis, it is going to start accepting that to be true for yourself.
And we build a story around that. I like the fact that you mentioned that dentist story, right? So the immediate action that is limiting you, or you're pushing back, or you're like delaying it, is brushing your teeth twice a day. But that itself is you associate as pain because you haven't built the habit yet. But when you frame it in a way, if you don't do it, the other pain is that you have to go to the dentist. That might cause you physical pain of cleaning your teeth, or maybe worst case taking your teeth out. Itself is a pain that you want to avoid by brushing your teeth twice. And I think people see the reading as like a more of a pain because you don't associate sometimes, or you don't have that clear picture what the outcome that you can get. It's also that delayed gratification we talk about a lot, right? People rationally have a like a lower level understanding why reading is important and how it helps people, personal growth, and all these heavy loaded words. But I think people find it difficult to relate it to their own journey and these current moments, and then see it in a way. What is the long term pain if I don't build a habit right now in terms of reading? And that, I think that has helped me in a way, and now I see the effects of it. But when I was struggling to build a reading habit, I was like the same. I know the books are there. Sometimes by impulse I purchase books, but I read a couple of chapters and drop it because I find it difficult to associate the long term pain or pleasure in terms of reading the books, right? That is very interesting, Mohit. Like when it comes to the motivation factor, right? What have you found? But I'm sure for 4 years of reading, close to 4 years of reading, motivation doesn't maintain or always the same. Sometimes I'm sure, as you mentioned, you picked up books that didn't connect with you and you were conscious enough to drop it, right? So if someone has picked a book, there is like this internal motivation driven by the life stage or the need for it to read a book and then overcome a life situation, or overcome some other challenge, or there's this external motivation that you're doing out of something external. How does this play a part, like in terms of keeping a consistent or be consistent flow?
I think it's a mixture of both. And there would be different situations or circumstances in your life where you decide what you want to do. But I feel a majority of it is going to be intrinsic rather than it being like a extrinsic. And like how you said, right, like the pain and pleasure part, when I started reading Stoic philosophy, in that they say that pain and pleasure are the same thing, both are not going to last for long. And I was like, that is absolutely correct. Like, you think about any pain or pleasure you've had in life that has not lasted for long. And then going back to what Naval Ravikant said on one of the podcast episodes, he said that happiness and sadness are both paradoxes in your life. Like, if you say, I'm sad today, that means you were happy at some time and you want to be happy again tomorrow. But if you say that you're happy today, that means you were sad in the future past, or you're going to be sad again in the future. So I feel that life is a cycle of like fortunate and unfortunate events. Once you accept that, you can reduce stress in your life. And increase peace in your life and also happiness and gratitude. But then, yes, coming back to motivation, right? I think so. I've given this example on a few other podcasts. I actually met on my, like during these conversations, I actually met, like I think so 3 or 4 years ago, aerospace engineer or an aeronautical engineer. I don't remember exactly. And it was, I think so, at a networking event or something. And like he actually told me that, I'm trying to remember the quote. He actually told me that motivation is like spontaneous combustion, but
Hmm.
discipline is setting yourself on fire. So I actually told him that, can you repeat it again? And then I wrote it in my notes because it was so good. And yeah, that is how it is, right? Motivation is spontaneous combustion, but discipline is setting yourself on fire. So every day you need to ask yourself, how badly do I want my goal or my dream or my aim in life? And am I ready to set myself on fire for that? And I think so discipline is a very underrated like thing that we are not thought about. And that is how it is. Like initially when I was reading, I didn't want to do it on an everyday basis, but it is like going to the gym. You slowly start seeing a change in your body, in your physique, in your probably mental or psychological abilities also. And then you're like, hey, this is like fantastic. Similarly with reading, I think so you have to start from somewhere. And if you just, and we've always heard, right, like leaders are readers, leaders are readers. And you can go and check any person like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Warren Buffett. Everyone will have their like book club or like the best books that they've read. Like Ryan Holiday is like always talking about books. So I think so when all these successful people are telling us that how did they achieve that success, it's by being a lifelong learner. Then why are more people not doing it? So I feel discipline is more important than motivation. And again, right, like going back to man's search for meaning, if you do not find meaning in that discipline, which is going to be uncomfortable, like you will never be able to motivate yourself. And like this is going this is going to be like a bit complex, a bit advanced, but then I'll say it. anything that anything is a law that is scientific and can be applied to life is a very powerful law. Like for example, the law of gravity. Like I have this pen in my hand now, and if I say that I'm going to leave this pen, it's not going to go up, it is going to go down. It is a law, you cannot do anything. So similarly, Newton has another law where he says that like any object that is in motion tends to stay in motion. So motivation is very, very similar. It is like that law. If you want motivation, you have to get up from the couch and go and do something. That is when motivation actually comes. Again, going back to atomic habits, he says, right, like if you don't feel like doing something, just do it for 2 minutes. And I think so, 9 out of 10 times, you are not going to do it for 2 minutes. You're going to do it for more than that. And 18 months ago, I started going to the gym because I understood that, hey, I'm in my 30s now. And in their 30s, men start losing muscle. And that is why athletes start retiring when they reach like the age of 35 to 40 because they're losing muscle on an everyday basis. So I was like, I need to go and do some strength training. And initially it was so difficult because it's something that I've never done. But I knew that with my reading habit, how I built it. So I knew that I have to be very patient. And that helped me build a habit of going to the gym. So I just told myself 3 days a week, whatever happens, I will go to the gym. I will not even exercise, but I will just go there, stand for 2 minutes and come back. Like 3 days a week, non-negotiable. And I said that, okay, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday, I will go to the gym and go and stand over there, even if I don't feel like doing anything. And initially, I did that. It did happen to me where I was not feeling like it, but I just went to the gym and I stood there and I came back home. And eventually, I was able to build. And even when I stood there, I used to see other people and I'm like, okay, this is an exercise I can do, or that is an exercise I can do. And that is how I learned because that's the right environment, right? Like power of association. If I sit over here and think about going to the gym, it's never going to happen. But then when I'm in the gym, I'm seeing other people doing it, and my mind automatically says that, hey, you can do it too if these other people are doing it. That was a very big tangent. So, yeah.
No, that's amazing. I find it interesting on how you build the reading habit, and then that habit building, you continue to build other certain difficult habits. What was once for you in your life, and then now you have successfully built it. Like building going to 3 days to the gym itself is like another habit that you build after you build the reading habit. And as you said, it's quite right. It's not just waiting for the motivation. And I think we add a lot of power to the motivation word, and we wait and to take action until we get motivation. It's rather the discipline. We all want growth, but we don't want the structure that enables it. And we all want to be billionaires with 8 packs or 6 packs, but like, what's the structure that gets you there? So, and that's what I think, as humans, we that understand how, again, that our motivations and discipline plays a part to get there. So I think you raised up a point of doing it for 2 minutes, and it's very fascinating that you went to the gym and then you said, stood there and then came back home. That itself, you were willing, you were intentional about changing the environment, even if you haven't continued or completed the actions. You were willing to change the environment and take that action, rather than being in the current environment where you knew that it hasn't worked for you before. So if someone has never picked up a book, how that can be applied, let's say right now we'll discuss, how can that be applied to change that environment a bit? Like, is there any way you would recommend to change the environment in building it? Let's say someone has tried in the same environment for maybe 5 years ago, hasn't worked, but they want to try this approach of changing the environment and then retry building the habit of reading a book. How would you approach that?
Oh, the environment is like so important. Like even I did not know that until I started not researching, until I started studying and learning and understanding and observing other people and especially the human brain. I started learning more about how the brain works because it is such a powerful organ that we have and we do not even understand the entire brain yet. Like it's been years and years, like I don't know, thousands of years, and we still don't understand the human brain like at 100%. So one of the things with the human brain is the survival instinct that we have. So right now, as we speak, if a lion enters my room or your room, like we're not going to just sit there and chill. We are going to like panic so much because that's our survival instinct that we have in our head. And let's say I'm not wearing these headphones, but I'm talking to you and something falls in the background and makes a very loud sound. It's not that I'm just going to continue sitting and talking to you. I'm going to look in that direction, that wherever that sound came from. And like anything that activates your senses is going to distract you while you're reading. So that is why it is very important to, I think, so number one, get rid of any digital device that's in your peripheral. Our peripheral is so powerful because just by sitting here, like I can not only see this laptop that I'm in front of, I also know that there's a wall here and there's a wardrobe over there, like just in my peripheral. I don't even need to see. I know what things are. That's how powerful your peripheral is. So let's say you're reading, right? Like, and someone just walks past, someone turns on the TV, there's a notification popping up on your phone. You're going to sit there and wonder that, hey, should I talk to this person? Should I check my phone? Should I look at the TV right now? What should I do? And like you've lost focus, like it's gone. Like that concentration that you built with so much of effort, that is like gone. And our brain is not made for multitasking, right? Like there's tons of research that shows that. So this is recently something that I've discovered in the last year, I would say 2024, is that try to sit in a place where you can see the entire room and try to have as much less clutter as possible because your mind associates clutter with chaos. And while you're reading, like you will also be thinking that, hey, should I do that first and then read, or should I read and then do that? So don't make it difficult for your brain. Like make it very easy for your brain, and also sounds, right? So I usually get up in the morning and read first thing because I know that like there are very few cars on the street. There are not a lot of people that are awake right now. Even my wife is sleeping in the other room. The TV is off. I don't need to look at my phone. Like I don't need to do anything. So I know that so these are five distractions that I spoke about, like five distractions that you will have during the day. So as soon as you eliminate that, it will automatically help you to sit down and focus. And I think so other things in the environment that you need to have is, I feel that you need something like a notepad or I don't know, a post-it or something for distraction. Because a lot of times while you're reading, you're sitting down and doing nothing. So your mind is going to take you to places. So unless and until it is. So a lot of times I will be reading a book and suddenly an idea will come for a LinkedIn post that has nothing to do with the topic of the book. But then you do not know how your mind works, right? Like it just picks up things from anywhere. So I always keep a notepad for my ideas, and I also keep like a post-it note for distractions. A very funny example I give is because it does happen to me that okay, my wife told me to buy something yesterday, but I forgot. And now today I'm reading, and then I remember, oh shit, I had to buy like onions from the supermarket. I didn't buy it. And now my mind is thinking, like I'm closing the book and I'm thinking, okay, once I'm done reading, I'll go to the gym, then I'll go to work, and then probably during lunchtime I'll buy onions. So you lost focus again. So as soon as that thought comes in your head, just write it on like a post-it or a sticky note and just say that, okay, buy onions later. So once that thought is on paper and you can see it, like you've taken the unorganized chaos in your head and organized it in reality for you to see, and it is out of your mind now. And I learned that after reading like books where clinical psychology is mentioned. So usually whenever someone goes to therapy, they are advised to write their thoughts down because when it's in your mind, it's unorganized chaos. But as soon as it's on paper, and I always quote Seneca on this, that worry is usually just in your imagination, and that is what happens. So yes, these are the things I have in my environment. Like I like to have colored pens, so I have a few colored pens with me. I have my post-it notes for distractions. I have a notepad for my ideas and anything, any lesson that I've learned from the book. Then my highlighters, and that's why I love physical books because I can highlight whatever I want to. And I also create my own index. I think so I've showed you my index in the past where I create my own index because in the future, like the index that the author has made, I have no idea what's there on that page when I come back to a book, let's say 6 months later. But then once I see my index, I know that okay, on page number 77, I learned something about investing and I want to revisit that. So I just turn the page to 77 and I'm like, okay, let me go through this really quickly. And that is really helpful. So I cannot pronounce his last name, but there's this guy on LinkedIn called Alex. That is whom I learned the indexing, how to create and why to create your own index from.
A
All of
lot.
that makes sense. Yeah.
It makes perfect sense and it's very practical and human because I know that, like, I find it fascinating. I remember you mentioned to me in our very first conversation to take notes when you get distracted. That's something I haven't done before, and I think now I understand from psychological perspective and also science backed insights that it helps to reduce the cognitive load when the mind is already is trying to deal with a lot of things. It's not just reading. And you are already putting load by trying to consume the information in reading, and then sometimes that could be a reason that you get distracted and makes it more of a chore, not that something that you enjoy. So I think a lot of people keep the reading as a habit to write down the notes that you get from the book. That itself is the rational part. Okay, I need to understand the lessons or I don't forget. But there is no system for you to note down or put those thoughts that comes into your head into paper, maybe in a more journaling way, so that you get your focus back or reduce the cognitive load. I think that is a really big strategy that has helped me, and thank you for sharing that. It's very helpful, Mohit, because these are the things that I think I find it very interesting from you, for someone who's read so much of books. You talked about revisiting, right, and indexing as well. People find sometimes reading as a goal to get to the finish line. Now for me, building the habit for more than 2 years, there are some books that I always revisit rather than picking up a new book. What would you say to that? Because I know, let's say someone is seeing your story, you're in a like this kind of journey of reading 150 books, and someone might get inspired to do the same. That might also create a circle in your brain and your behavior just to finish book after the other. Now this is what I'm asking you, what is your take on that? Do you revisit books, and if so, why and how?
That's another great question. As far as revisiting books is concerned, the first 2 years that I read books, I did not revisit any book. I read most of the books like a novel. That's why my first 2 years, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I read around like 50 plus books in my first 2 years. But then the next 2 years, it took me some time to read other books. But then, yes, I understood that, like, I was reading it as a novel and I was not taking much from the book. And I don't remember who said it or where did I read it, but whatever it was, it said that whenever you read a book once, you're not the same person again. So whenever you read a book once, the person who reads it the second time is a different person. The third time is a different person. So give you an example, let's say one of my favorite books to read once a year is The Magic of Thinking Big. I try to read that at least once a year. Usually I try to read it in January so that I can set myself up for the year. So the first time I read the book, I was by myself in Melbourne, living in a share house with three other boys, searching for a job in Adelaide so that I could move to Adelaide. The second time I read that book, I was in Adelaide. I had a job in Adelaide. I was planning to get married in a few months, and I was trying to apply for a. I was thinking of applying for a visa, and I was thinking how to get a permanent residency, etc., etc. The third time when I read the book, I was now married. I was now married. My wife was with me for almost 7 years, 7 months in Adelaide itself. I had worked in the job for 1 year. I had actually started writing on LinkedIn. I had also been on a couple of podcast episodes, etc., etc. So if you see practically, like every time I read the book, it was a different person who was reading a book. And I've also read this in the relationship books that you have to love different versions of your partner, and that is what it is, right? Like every time I read the book, I was a different version of myself. And similarly with reading, like you're going to be a different person every time you read that book. So revisiting is very important, especially for those books where you felt like you created this amazing emotional bond with. Just keep, like, revisit that book as often as possible. And a lot of times, like I would be reading, let's say I'm reading a book and it's going amazing, like from Monday to Sunday I've read the book, it's going amazing. Then suddenly I come across a chapter on Monday where I'm like, this lesson where this is not, like, I'm losing focus, I don't like this at all. So I have two options: either I can skim through that quickly, or I just leave that chapter, or I leave the book, or keep the book down and go read a book that you've already read. That's a great chance for you to go revisit a book that you've already read. So when I'm sitting down, I usually, now it's a bit advanced, I don't recommend everyone doing it, but then I usually have two or three books just on the side. Like I will have a book, I'll have a couple of books that I've already read and just what I'm feeling on the day. So let's say now I'm reading a book called How to Talk to Anyone because I want to talk to more people, especially in a public setting. So I'm learning how to do that. And sometimes that book can get a bit heavy because there are so many methods and strategies mentioned in the book. And like I feel that, hey, I've read so much but I've not applied much of this book, so I just keep the book down. I'll be like, let me go and apply a few of these lessons and come back. But then I want to continue my reading habit. I don't want to stop reading. So I pick up some other book that I've read in the past. Like I will pick up, let's say, Big Magic or Think and Grow Rich or Meditations, whatever I feel like on the day, so that I ensure that I don't mess up the reading habit that I've built up for such a long time. And I have this undue pressure on myself now that I every day get up and tell myself, oh, you've read every day since 2022, so make sure that you don't miss a day now, which is like undue pressure on myself.
That's amazing. Magic of Thinking Big, reading 3 times, and it's a testament for you that it's book reading a book is not like a one-time journey, and it can come to your life in different stages, different life experiences. I can say the same. I think Power of Now is a book that I try to read once a year. I mean, it's not like a goal that I set, but I think it's more of my intuition leaning into opening a book or a chapter of it from the highlights and reading. It's the same thing, and I think it's a good lesson for the others that it's not about just reading a book per se for just to show it that you have done it and add it to your list. It's rather your own self journey, and in also being honest with yourself on why you're reading it, and when you apply those things into your life as well, right?
Absolutely. Can I interrupt you there, Pan?
Yeah, of course.
It's regarding the power of now. I'll give you another example, right? Like we spoke about revisiting old books. The power of now, when I read it the first time, it was in 2022, and I remember it really well because I had some visa issues going on, visa problems going on. And I read meditations during that time, and wow, that changed my entire perspective. And I also read Power of Now. So once everything, all my problems, when my problems went away, and I tried to pick up Power of Now again, I was like, this book doesn't make sense to me anymore. So that's the
Yeah.
that's on the other side, right? Like I've
Right.
already
Yeah.
read this book. Why am I not finding it interesting again now? So Power of Now, I've just read it once, and after that, I've never read it. And that is another example of, sometimes like you will be able to create an emotional attachment in the moment, but then after that, it's like, I don't know who this is, like what book is this, and who this person is.
Amazing, and thanks for your honesty. It's a meaning we assign to every time, every day, everything in life, right? Even the habit of reading and that lesson can help you in some way based on the event or the stage that you are in life. Whereas sometimes you don't feel that important on the same book that you found importance 2 years ago. So that's the thing. It is okay to pick up a book, and then if it doesn't connect with you, to leave it. And as you said, maybe go into a book that you read already, or maybe find another one, rather than just committing yourself or putting too much pressure into finishing it just because you invested on it. Right? That's the main thing. This one I wanted to ask you because it's a request from some other listeners too. And personally, I struggle with this, so I don't have an answer for it. Fiction versus non-fiction, right? Now, a lot of people say, okay, I went into book clubs and I find every book club I went, I think a couple, I would say 80% of the people I met are reading fiction. And then maybe there were this odd couple of people, maybe I found the book club which is more into fiction. What is your take on it? Did you start picking up fiction books? Because for me, I tried, as you said, I've tried picking up fiction books. I think two or three, read one chapter or another. The only fiction book that I've personally connected and finished is The Alchemist, which is one of my favorite books all time. It's not like a fiction, but also I feel it's a mix. There's a deeper life lesson and it's more philosophical too. Maybe that's why I connected that with more. But what is your experience with fiction and non-fiction? Like, does it need to be one?
I'll just give my take on this, like it's my
Yeah.
opinion. It's not the truth or anything. But then again, you mentioned a book which I did not enjoy, The Alchemist. I didn't enjoy it at all. I was like, what is this?
Okay.
And that is what it is, right? Even with The Power of Now, when I read it the first time, I was like, wow, what a book. And then when I read it the second time, I'm like, is this the same book that I read last year? I could not relate with it at all. And even Alchemist, I was like, when will this book get over? That is how I was thinking. And I was like, I hope there is some really good thing at the end. The problem is when you've read a book that has a very similar story or a similar teaching, and then suddenly you read some other book that has the same thing. So I think so whatever you read first takes precedence over the one that you read second.
Mm.
Because that I understood that when I read Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich talks about the subconscious mind very heavily. And after that I tried to read Power of Our Subconscious Mind. And I couldn't just read it because it was the same topic written by two different people, and I just
Yeah.
couldn't resonate with what this person was saying, and I just dropped it. Anyway, going back to fiction versus non-fiction, right? So when I started, I thought fiction was for losers. I'll be very honest with you. I thought I
I,
not
I
only
I'll try if I can share this on the video or not, but I hope I won't lose any followers, right? But anyway, go on. Yes.
yes, but then I was very immature and did not understand like why fiction is also important. So I was reading this book called The Ride of a Lifetime. It's written by Disney's ex-CEO.
Yeah.
So in that he talks about the three things that are important to Disney: animation, of course, storytelling, and creativity. But you cannot get these three. You can probably, but then you will not be able to get these three from non-fiction books. But these three are, if you leave animation aside, storytelling and creativity, I feel are the hallmarks of the human civilization. Like you will see creativity everywhere and you will see storytelling everywhere. What we two are doing right now is like I'm talking about my story and you're asking questions about my story. That is how it is going. I think so. A change. I actually the Alchemist, right? Like there's a book called The Go Giver that I really enjoy, and that book is very similar to Alchemist, where it's a fiction book, and that book teaches you lessons through a story, and that is where actually the shift started for me. I'm like, okay, like although this is fiction, I'm learning something from it, so let me try reading other fiction books. And that is when my perspective changed, that I was very immature and did not have, I was misinformed that fiction is for people who are losers. And it's not great to label people also, right? Like, you shouldn't be saying people are losers. But then that is what I thought. And I'm more than happy to. And Brené Brown, right? Brené Brown always says to reduce shame in a conversation, increase vulnerability. So I'm not afraid to say that that is what I used to think, because people relate to people love success stories, but they relate more to your struggles and the challenges that you've gone through. That is what I've learned through all these conversations I've had with people. Actually, later on, I learned that I love thriller books, like the books that have some sort of thriller element to it. And I started reading more of those books, and that is where like my perspective changed. I think so. It's when you read those books that is really important. I feel when you get up in the morning, I think you should read both. Like, you should try to squeeze in both those books, both categories of books sometime during the day. Like, even if you read it for 10 minutes, you're still reading 20 minutes. Or even if you read for 7.5 and 7.5 is 15 minutes a day, which is like 90 hours a year or something. So, which is like pretty good. So when you get up in the morning, think of your brain as your mobile battery that has been charged all night. It is going to be at 100%. So when you get up in the morning, your brain is ready to think critically, reason logically, learn complex topics. And that's why they say that morning time is the best time to study or understand or learn anything. So that is the time you read nonfiction. Read something that you've like probably not read before, because you're ready to take on the day at that time, because you've got up, you're fresh, you're ready to do whatever you want to. As as gradu as the day gradually progresses, during the afternoon, like, if you plan to read in the afternoon or later during the morning, like let's say 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. or 1 p.m., I would say choose a book probably that you've already read in the past, or choose like a story book. It can be anything. It can be Alchemist, it can be thriller, it can be, I don't know, true crime, whatever it is, choose such a book. And when you're going to sleep at night, let's say 20 minutes before you go to sleep is the best time to read or not best time to read fiction, because I don't think so you're planning to learn anything at that time. You just want your brain to switch off, like just switch off and go to sleep. So that's a great time to read fiction, like fantasy or probably sci-fi, or again reading a thriller or something. So I read. I've been experimenting this year, trying to read. Sometimes I read not. I used to read non-fiction in the past, and I used to be up like this, like the whole night, like thinking about the concept from the book. So I understood it's not good for me to read non-fiction in the night. But then this year, I actually tried reading biographies, memoirs, autobiographies, because again, that's story. Like, people are talking about their story and what they've learned. So, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, I really respect him as an actor. And I read Eddie Jacko's book, The Happiest Man on Earth. I read Disney's CEO's book, The Ride of a Lifetime, all in the night. Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, I read it the night. And yeah, so that's my take on fiction versus non-fiction.
Amazing.
I
I think
retract.
yeah, I mean you have tried. It's also like having an open mind to try it out as well. Like, I mean, I understand biologically from the science insights, it says that morning time when you wake up is the best time to consume. I think Jim Quick or someone, I can't remember, pardon me if I get this wrong, like he says 3 C's: in the morning you consume, afternoon create, evening clear. That's in a way, I think there are 4 C's, I can't remember, but something similar. And it makes sense for you to pick up a non-fiction book if you are trying to build that habit in the morning where you are more energized and you have more focus, less cognitive load. Whereas in the evening, when your day has gone through, there's a lot in your mind already thinking about tomorrow. And anyway, you're drained with your energy. We pick something that calms you, that you don't have to consume and take a lot from it. That is amazing. And I'll try it out again to pick up a fiction book in the end. I think it's a good point that you mentioned. It doesn't need to be a heavy personal growth or philosophical book in the night. Maybe sometimes of a biography, like you're reading, it's not fiction, but you're reading a biography which tells a story of someone, a company, or a success story, where you can read it in a much more less with less energy rather than another heavy non-fiction book.
Well
um
summarized, correct.
uh,
That's right.
we'll end the conversation. I think I wanted to pick up, I know we've chat over 1 hour. Time flies, right? It has been amazing. I think it's a reading a book masterclass, I would say, or building a reading habit masterclass. I want to pick up on one of the, I think your second book. It's one of my favorite books too, and I still sometimes read my highlights. Man's Search for Meaning. It's a book about purpose, and I think it's quite relevant and timely. I think it will be timely forever for whatever the stage humanity is. What was your biggest takeaway from that book? Because for me, I think how Viktor Frank has mentioned and written that story about how he found purpose in the mid of suffering, and the beauty of that kindness is a choice, regardless of the situation that you're in. A simple act of giving a bread to the inmates who are suffering, and it's also a showcase about the power of having a meaning in your life in an extreme condition, and when there's no humanity there at all, and when death, you're facing death every single day, but for him to still survive and walk out of it and finding a purpose bigger than his life, so that he shares this story so others won't suffer in the same way. What is your biggest takeaway from that book?
I think I already shared one about self-esteem, not being dependent on the validation and respect of others. I think so. Another lesson I took from the book is that I think so. It's again, I love quotes. If I see a quote in a book, I'll write it down somewhere and look at it again and again, just to think about what this means for me. And
Mm.
I feel that that's why it's so important to document things that come to you and just go, because you do not know how your mind works. Like you might think about something and then you'll be like, okay, I'll note it down later, and later you cannot even remember what you were thinking about. And that is why the book is, there's another quote in the book that says that when you're no longer able to change the situation, you're challenged to change yourself. And that is what I was going through. Like, I couldn't change my situation during COVID, so I was challenged to change myself. And the way I changed myself was like developing a reading habit. And then I read in David Goggins' book that try to be as uncomfortable as possible when you're exercising. So I would not go for, like, I would wait for it to be windy, cold, rainy. Then I used to go out and exercise. I was like, let me try and see what happens. And that was fantastic. It was like another experience in itself. And he talks about in his book, right? He says when you're exercising in such environments, you will understand like how life works. Like any person who's voluntarily put themselves in a difficult situation will see that there is nobody around them, and that automatically gives them an advantage. But anyways, going back to Man's Search for Meaning, I feel that the book, I learned a lot about like kindness, about love, and also about being tolerant with people, because I feel he went through all those things in a concentration camp. And do you think a concentration camp is a great environment to read a book? I don't think so. But like even with Viktor Frankl, right? Like he actually had the manuscript of the book in his with him when the Nazi soldiers found him, and they actually burnt it. But then and then for him, he said that, like, I now not only had theoretical proof, but I also have lived experience. So that is why that book is so powerful. And anyone who has read it has not given like a negative review or a bad review, because they don't have the lived experience. And anything that you read, you cannot say that that's not true, because you don't know what that person has gone through at that time. That's why that book is so powerful. That's my take.
And one thing I've shared, like I think I wrote it down in somewhere as well. Yeah, I think it's still there. It did not really matter what we expected from life, rather what life expect from us. That's a beautiful sentiment for that type of an experience that we can sum up our conversation with. Mohit, we wrap up our conversation with one quick rapid fire question. That is,
So
it's a quick
I'm
one.
bad at this at rapid fire.
It's just a simple one. What's one thing you unlearned
It's not rapid fire at all. What's one thing I unlearned?
in your life, in your career, or in anything?
I used to feel that degrees will help me do anything, but then now I feel that dreams will help me do anything. So I had to unlearn
Wow.
the degree spot.
That's one of the best answers I've got to it. Like you said, you are bad. I know it's not a rapid fire question, but like I think you came up with an answer that is so powerful. So degrees don't help you achieve,
Don't chase degrees, chase dreams.
chase the dreams. Wow, wow, Mohit, can't thank you enough for the time and your insights and your wisdom. I really appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of people get a lot of value, especially around books and the lessons and habit building, so many things. I'm sure this is not the last conversation that I have with you, but thanks again for your time. Hopefully we'll have another conversation very, very soon.
Absolutely. And thank you so much again, once again, for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Mohit.